Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Dave Dobbs here. It's the 24th of June, 2020. And I'm sitting here in, apologies, first of all, for not making a video for so long. I've been dealing with my lovely dear old mum, actually. She's been very sick. And she's on a lot of morphine now. So she's in that kind of last palliative sort of care stage where she's, she's got a lot of cancer in that. She's got cancer right through her body and right through her spine, which is why it's so painful for her. And in her brain and in her chest. And it's basically through her body. She's got it in bones. Full on, really. So it's, it's a lot of work. And so I'm just sitting here kind of doing whatever I can to sort of assist her. She's asleep right now, so I thought I'd take the opportunity to make a video, but it's been so full on just getting it to this stage. And but at least we can be with her, I really want us, my dear mum, and I'm so lucky because all her friends are coming over and visiting, and I'm really encouraging all her friends to come and visit. I asked her if she's scared if anyone comes and kills her with COVID. She nearly died laughing, poor thing. So we're not too worried about that. We're just carrying on, and we're just carrying on going. People are just obviously, staying within kind of like their distances and that sort of stuff, but they can still come around and say hello and just peer down. She's crunched over like that, so you got to get really low to kind of speak to her so she can see your face and that sort of stuff. But she loves visitors. She really does, even though it's a bit tiring. She's come back here. I wasn't invited to her wake because she saw all the people who live here as her children as well. They see her as their kind of fairy godmother. Really, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. So and I keep my voice down because I'm right next to the window there. So I've got a microphone that hopefully is going to pick up my voice because I'm speaking quite softly, and I'll have to up the levels a little bit afterwards. So apologies if the sound is a bit awkward. A bit low, a bit crap. But, the fact that I can be here and be able to mourn my mum is so special, because like I say, she came here, she's my dear mum. She's been this massive process of this, not only being a mother to me, she's been a channel all her life, not just for me, for many friends. And she's been a mum for many people as well in this world. She's become a spirit mother in this process. She's going to be a spirit mother to many people when she leaves this plane. She's going to work with many people on this plane. I know that. She works with many people already. So I know that my connection is not going to be lost with her. If anything, it's going to get better and bigger. When I did that first kind of like big flyby on the 22nd of December 2015. No, sorry, the second one. The one where, if I share my screen and I come over to this screen here. Well, actually, we've got Denny, and I'm gonna come back to Denny as in Denise Mitchell in 1 second, because Denise has just passed, and she passed on the time of the flyby. But let me just finish where I was going with my mum, and then I'm going to come back to Denise because I've got such a special message to tell you about Denise. She's such a special soul, and it links up to this here. So this shot here, this was on the 21st of January 2017, and do you remember when we were due this big flyby? Now, for my home community here, they'd seen me shout out the two previous flybys, and they were quite small, weren't they, compared to when it flew by on the 21st. We'd got the 200-day sequence, but we didn't really understand the sizes or the proximities or the kind of like the orbital mechanics. And now we understand so much if we're willing to look at and consider, and I'm afraid this doesn't fit into a 5-minute none of this fits into a 5-minute clickbait, I'm afraid. None of this. It's a very, very big, complex story of working out the orbital mechanics of the Planet X system. And that's what we've been calculating through this more than anything else, is the big revealing of the system that we really live in. But you can imagine when I'd said that this flyby would come by on the 21st of January 2017, my mum had come up to the mountains. I was up in the mountains at the time. And she bought me her channeling cross, and she said, I can't do it anymore, sweetheart. I haven't got the energy. You've got to just do it now. And of course, she'd passed that on to me. My father, who died 7 years or something before, had passed it on to her. And she, in some essence, has passed a lot on to me. And that process of me finally unraveling this big message that's been coming through this process of work. There's a lot of work that's been involved on this on all sides, especially in the latter stage. And you can imagine when this turned up on the 21st of January, it was a real, she passed me the channeling cross and this thing came in, and suddenly I was on the map when that flew by. Even though by that stage, in my own community back home, they were just like, oh, that guy's full of shit, tiny little flybys that don't mean nothing had gone by. And you remember the previous one to the 21st of January was on the 23rd of June 2016, and it flooded across Britain. It was the day the Brexit vote occurred. And of course, where we are right now in the flybys, I'd said, well, we won't be able to really finally make a new model with all the updated information until the end of June, because that's the end of the sequence. And of course, we got to the 23rd of June yesterday, and what did we get? We had an earthquake, a 7.4 near Puerto Rico near Mexico City. So we're expecting that earthquake, we're expecting that type of seismology because of the line in which this affects on either side of our solar system, that kind of end of June. Not that that's the only place we get seismology, earthquakes, volcanism, but we get that kind of the end of June and then the end of December, January, these kind of signs. Now, obviously, we see it overlapping, bleeding either way, like we saw May the 4th, Kilauea going off on May the 4th, 2018, massive eruption, where we see a 6-week period of a volcano massively spewing magma and obviously carbon dioxide. And then on the other side, when this first came in, where this begins in this present cycle of Jupiter going around the Planet X system, which is what this is all about, not what you've been told about. It's a very different story to what most people really comprehend about it. But when this system began with Jupiter's present cycle was on the 11th of March 2011, and where we had Fukushima, and you can see 11th of March, you can see that kind of late January runs right up to March, and it can go the other way on the June sighting. It can go either way. Like last year in 2019, we had an amazing shot on July the 3rd of it going the opposite direction, coming out behind Jupiter and towards us as we came round. And Alex Lujan caught it around about the 3rd of July in one of his videos. And that obviously now we were at the end of this aspect, at the end of June. We won't begin that until, if it was last year, it was July, then it moves forward a month because of the movements of Jupiter moving one calendar month each year. And so that we won't see that now, that transit of the bodies coming around behind. Let me just go over to here before we go back to, is that the best way? Is that the best one? I haven't really got that up just now, and that will be too complicated to take us to. Anyway, I'm going to come to all of this. I'm going to come to the flybys, but I just wanted to stay with my mum and this. I want to come back now to Denise, because Denise has just passed. Denise Mitchell, Denny, we call her in Glastonbury, and she's standing there with some. You can definitely see Dana Amadeus in the picture there, and Denise is in the not in the last election for the mayor campaign. In the penultimate election for the mayor campaign, I was also running. Yeah, I was running, and she was running for mayor of Glastonbury, and I was at the same time running for government. Effectively, I was in the elections, running for my birthday party, and my manifesto was a miracle. So I was bringing a bit of satire into the whole political system, as I believe Pete Pendragon, as he often goes, and that goes by his poetry name. He's the guy who edited Laughing Gas, but he referred to the campaign as the is it never trust a hippie or never trust a heapie? campaign because I was running up against James Heapy. It was a lot of fun. I mean, I was just trying to bring a bit of colour into the whole process, and that's what Denny has always done. She's brought colour into our political processes, and by bringing colour in, she's enabled people to get involved, and their involvement has made a massive change to the political landscape of Glastonbury, because when real people get involved in politics, real beautiful things happen. When we step out and just ignore it and say, they're all this and they're all that, don't get involved in it. If you vote for them, you just encourage it and all the rest of it. When we abstain, the worst people can then come in and take advantage of our disillusionment in our democratic process, and they capitalize on our apathy to a massive degree, corporations massively. And Denny was in the opposite camp to that. Denny was into involvement. She was into magic. And I remember there on that night at the Count, in around about 2015, 16, I guess it would probably be 2016 if it's every 4 years or so, but maybe 15, but I'm not too sure, but it's around about that time. But I was there at the Count. It was about 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was standing next to Denny's desk where they were counting her votes to see whether she'd win. And she looked at her really quite measly pile of votes at the time, and she said, "I don't think I'm going to be Glastonbury Mayor this year, Dave." And I looked at the little pile of votes on the table, and I looked back at her, and I looked at Denny again, and I said, "It ain't over yet, Denny." And she won. And I'd known her for a long time, especially anytime there's anything going up on the tour, or big processions in town, or people need a bit of support, or just a bit of enthusiasm. She's there every time. You know, she will continue to be there. She's got such a massive heart connection to so many people. She will be there for them more so probably now than ever before. You know, I know that. Yeah, especially her passing at the time of the eclipse on the solstice. But she died alone in hospital. You know, okay, she had probably the doctors and the nurses around her and that sort of stuff. Her friends and families couldn't be there with her because of the whole COVID thing, and that's what this is all about. It's all about division, separation, and stopping us reaching the highest space because we haven't got the support from each other in that time. And you know, Denny was there when we had the, you know, I was running in the last election as well. I always kind of run whenever there's a political process going on. If I'm in the country or something, I'd always run and get involved, even though it cost me 500 quid and I won't get it back. It's just like when you're involved, you can bring so much wonder into the political framework, and then you bring so many other people in, and your involvement, like I say, just it snowballs. It snowballs, and it gets people involved. And they start having fun, and they start expressing their opinions, and then they don't feel so angry because they've expressed their opinion and they've been heard in this process, and it lightens their load, and it brings in a clarity and a clearness and an involvement that is so magical. Anyway, she turned up, and I don't know if you remember that, but I'd hired the town hall, and she'd helped me in that process, and as well as the members of the Green Party and the Lib Dems and all that sort of stuff. Everybody wanted me to have a voice in that process. And she was there, and she was there on that night when we did it. And ironically, I see Dana there because David Hatfield was there, and he was one of the early writers of the Planet X system in our time. You know, obviously, all eras of our history, it seems that there's writers about Planet X because it's always there. Let's face it, it's always there. We put it on this 3,600 year orbit, so it comes in every 3,600 years. It's just it's not like that. This is every 336 years. This thing comes around, and there's various different points in this. So we're constantly experiencing it one way or another. It's always right there. And anyway, Dana's working on this film idea called the Glastonbury Grail, which is ironically another person who was at my talk was as well as Denny, was David Hatfield was there. And we were talking enormously about Planet X, and I'd made the video at the time when we were expecting seismology, as in earthquakes in Europe, if this thing was where I said. And of course, an hour after I'd finished it, after talking about my whole thing about belief and the carbon dioxide story, about how we're being used, this whole carbon dioxide story is being used to push nuclear, and how we're building nuclear power stations on fault lines and tsunami hotspots. You know, where Hinkley Point is built is where a tsunami struck in 20th of January 1606, and and it fits directly into the into 336-year cycle that ironically take us right back to 262 if you keep following the cycles and all the different bits of history that have occurred, and we can start piecing this cycle together so clearly now as we begin to kind of uncover the true astronomics of our solar system. Anyway, she's working with this, so it's interesting that she's in that shot as well, because that's just one I saw, just a lovely picture there, and how all these different people, we're all working together on this big thing, really, this big unraveling of what's really happening. So it's a big love up there to Denny and to the process that she's helped me develop, and she's helped it so many people in her involvement and colour and amazement. You know, big love to all of you out there that bring colour into our political processes, that we can get involved, because they repulse us out of these arenas. When it takes these angels to come into our lives and bring us, take us to engage in them, ourselves and take a part and bring love, light and colour into this real democratic process. And remember, demo means people. A democratic process cannot be even called and even have the word demo in it if people do not get involved. A load of corporations coming in and kind of fabricating the involvement of people is not a democratic process, not until people getting really involved. And Denny did that, so big love to Denny. Big love to Denny. So, okay, so what's been coming in of late? Well, I've got this shot here, you know, because where are we now? Let's go back over to where we we'll go over to here. We've got the 50p coin here, which for those who haven't seen it, this was a commemoration 50p coin that was minted in 2017. And ironically, it shows what I call the Galileo timeline. And this was Galileo's timing that marked out here, ironically, which is so interesting that they should actually highlight the exact aspect of his involvement. You know, you think, well, we're going to get more to this, how this works. But I just wanted to. Am I going to show you there? Okay, so if I come to this and we see how this system works and see what we've been observing here, we've already experienced this aspect of the flyby. We are now coming around here, in my opinion. But this is the next part. This will be what was July the 3rd last year, where we saw this point of the transit here. Sorry, no, that will be July the 3rd here. This will be the July the 3rd that occurred. Alex Lewin caught it on his Planet X channel around about July the 3rd, 2019. So that's the next point, because we've just come past this point. This had already gone by about a month ago, and we've done all that in the last video. But when we went past this point, we kind of come in this kind of alignment with the sun, with the body that passes us and its transition point. So we've got the debris here. So we come past the debris trail. And just to say that in 2022, in June the 23rd, 2022, these 2 points will be the actual two Earth and the celestial object itself will be in the closest proximity. I'm imagining because of the patterns we've seen and the way this drops back a month each year. And so we're just seeing its tail now. So that was, if I come over here and we see this kind of aspect here, we have, you know, this was massive sky serpent. It was moving. Now, in my opinion, that's what this is. I might be incorrect. If you play the video, you can really get a sense of the motion of this against this. Obviously, it could just be this cloud moving that gave the sensation, but gave the appearance that it was moving. But you know, the the man who got the footage, the person who got the footage, was like, it was moving. What we've seen quite a few. If we come over to is that Brandon Corey's channel? So Brandon Corey's just caught that. That's just come in 24th of June. So we're of mind that this has flown by already. The main body itself has flown by. You know that we're just next to, we're close to the tail now. I'm of mind that we're past most of the debris now. We've had most of the experience. Everything can hopefully resume back together. And obviously there could be more debris up there. There could be more things coming through. You just don't know. We're near the tail, basically, at the moment. Anything can happen. We just don't know. But in my opinion, we might be. I mean, this is it. You know, this is our closest proximity to the tail. But the way we experience this is in the political playout of what's unfolding, because of the different agendas rule over us through the political playout. And, you know, that big flyby that came by on the 21st of January 2017, when I was up in the mountains with my mum. That was Trump's inauguration day. You know, the 23rd of June was the Brexit vote. In 1 month from now will be the date that Britain is forcing Europe to either sign a free trade deal, or it just draws its money, it takes all its money away. And this whole kind of virus thing has given the whole of Europe a real idea of what this could look like if the whole economy, you know, if Europe loses its AAA status, if it doesn't comply with what's being put to it. This could be an end of their AAA credit status. You know, those basically who are in the clan will have to, you know how this works. This is perpetual war. Those who want a big slice of the pie will have to, there'll be a warring nation if they sign up to this. You know, NATO is going to expect that they do their military duty if they're part of this free trade deal. This is all hand in hand. You know how this works. We all know this, how this works. You know, it's a crusade. It's a crusade. This is when the crusade is always launched, just like 1939 on the 20th of January. Again, and Carlos Ferrada was predicting that a massive earthquake would occur, and it occurs on the 20th. He predicts it on the 24th. He's 4 days out, and yet this massive earthquake occurs right where he says it's going to occur, on effectively the same coastline as it had just occurred yesterday. A bit obviously further north yesterday, but you can understand that this thing is moving up further north into the northern hemisphere. At every point, Jupiter is effectively ascending up. I say Jupiter is ascending through the ecliptic plane of our solar system. In effect, our whole solar system is descending through the Planet X system now. It's come up and it's going back round down the other side. And that point now we're on the other side coming down. So that we're descending through the kind of like the Planet X system, and Jupiter is coming past us, and every time it comes past us, it's going higher. So for us, we could also say that Jupiter is ascending. It's the same thing, effectively. And so we've, you know, and you know, there's so much stuff that I could bring in about the last. I mean, about the flyby last month. You know, as we just saw the last phases of that. I mean, oh my goodness me, the amount of flybys we've had, haven't we? There's just been so many. There's just been so many, haven't there? There's just been thousands now. Thousands. And what led us to this kind of 200-day anomaly of this 200-day sighting anomaly that led us into this bigger understanding. Like I say, it wasn't until you know, but it was just one. I've got that up there. as we come round here, and then, you know, like I say, last year that was July the 3rd. So this year that's going to be about, literally 1 month later, that's going to be about the beginning of August. This year we're going to get this flyby here. It should be a long way from us, but, you know, we're going to see it for sure. And one interesting thing I saw recently was, when was that shot came in? That was on June the 10th. So that was the aspect of that flyby coming in and going by back then. And you can see the two arcs of that as it goes through. You know, but the, that was just 23rd of June. So we're seeing, you know, literally, you know, it's iron falling from the sky from this system. It's iron from space, just, you know, it's come through the magnetopores, it's got burnt up, and it's boiled down to its sweetest nectar, the cleanest iron ever, just falling from the sky because of the passage. There's another interesting one from Brandon Corey Nagley as well. When was that posted? That's the 16th of June. And that's an object we've just seen, but there, from that perspective, you really see the arc of it. And that's again the system that that was the same shot that's the same object, in my opinion, that when did we see that? You remember the shot that, if we come there to that shot, you remember the shot that Alex Luhan got on the 1st of September 2019, and it was right where we expected it to be, but it was the wrong way round, and where it was the final piece of the puzzle to realize that this thing was orbiting something, it was going round something over here. It wasn't going round the sun as we were suspecting it was to be. It was everything. It was exactly where I was saying look out for it, but it was the wrong way round. And when we saw that, it was just like, oh my God. And it's been this, I mean, there's been so much evidence now. There's been so much fantastic evidence now of that system that, you know, that when we come back to that shot there, that's that same object seen from another aspect. And I want to show you this Soho image, and this was put up by Stefan Silvio Constantinescu. Oh wow, I said that all in one fell swoop, and was like, I've been practicing Stefan, because it's a difficult name to say, but I'm getting a bit better. But when you look at this, and you're going to observe something about this, see if you can observe it as I play it. And you're going to see now, Mr. MBB333 showed a similar object showing something that was reflecting the light. And it could be, the only thing we'd expect to be there is Venus. But how could Venus reflect the light when it's between us and the sun? It would have to be behind the sun from our perspective to reflect the light. So it couldn't be Venus. And one of the reasons it couldn't be Venus is because it's on the other side of the sun behind. But have you noticed anything else? It's going the wrong way. Planets don't go that way. They go the other way. It's going in the direction that I'm showing you here. Can you imagine? It's coming across this pathway. If we're looking across from this angle and we're seeing okay, I'm showing you from that perspective because this is in the December point. But if Earth is over here and we're seeing this orbit here, this inner orbit. No, sorry, what am I talking about? No, that's exactly what you're seeing here. Where we are over here is exactly that aspect of that going behind here, going in that direction. Can you see that? It's exactly what I'm showing you. The same thing. It corroborates with this story exactly. So I get confused because you get so much kind of like you happen to take on board so much data here. I'm afraid with this new system, with this new model, and like I say, if you're looking for 5-minute clickbait just to sort of like get you through the moment, this ain't the channel. This just ain't your channel, I'm afraid. So what else can I show you about now? About the evidence of where we, I mean, this is exactly the point. We've seen all the different aspects of this as we've come through. First, we'll look at that and understand where the sun is. Understand that this is the kind of December time. Is that right? Yeah, this Earth being here is kind of December, January sort of time. And Jupiter's right over there. Now we're told that Jupiter's right over here, aren't we? On the far side of the sun at the moment, that we're over here. We've got Venus here. Sorry, the cursor's so small there, but we've got Venus here. We've got Earth here. And then beyond here, we've got Jupiter. And then beyond here, and then beyond that, we've got Pluto in this grand kind of alignment. Aren't we? That's the story. That's the Copernicus story. And even today, I'm not going to pull up all the epic shots because I do it pretty much every time, don't I? The epic shots of Jupiter that we've seen, especially in 2018, all the epic shots that defied, and it was so clearly Jupiter, so massive, just like Galileo saw it massive in 1613, and all his moons, and then he's put under house arrest, so we can turn around and say, yeah, Galileo's correct. Copernicus' model that was 50 years old before is the correct model, that Jupiter orbits the sun, which is clearly not what we were seeing in 2018. Jupiter massive, people catching it with their iPhones. And remember when Galileo saw it in 1613, he was seeing it with a 20 times telescope. So when we look at that and try and make some better sense of it, we come to this model. And this is really what it's all about. This cycle here is our 336-year orbit of our sun, with Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars trailing behind it, doing this 336-year orbit round the dwarf planet, round planet X, whatever you want to call that. And we're at this point right now. And we're crossing Jupiter, just like in the point when Halley's Comet was discovered by Isaac Newton. And no doubt he was figuring out this whole orbital chart. Don't forget, NATO hadn't been chemtrailing the hell out of everything. But then, whilst NATO's been chemtrailing the hell out of everything and blocking up the sky so we can't see the phenomenon that is going up in our sky, we've had a look all around the globe from all these different webcams and all these different cameras bringing us all this added information that we've had so much corroborating information to build this new passage here. So Jupiter coming around here, our sun coming around here with the four planets that we come to know orbit the sun, and then we cross the line of Jupiter coming here, and suddenly Jupiter breaks all the rules that we understand as we do a flyby of Jupiter. And as we go through, Jupiter's going around every 12 years. 11.89 years, and it comes round. We get a number of cycles, nearly 3 cycles that we're in close proximity as we go past. And the same over here. This was the 1939 point. This is the this is the now point that we're in. But this was also the point in 1680 that Isaac Newton saw Halley's Comet, except that he saw it in on the 19th of November, 1680, and then we get another sighting, except that's just swept under the carpet because it just interferes with this model that they're pushing, this bullshit story they're pushing. And then we go 84 years and we come to the time Uranus was discovered with its supposedly 84-year orbit. And then we go another 84 years and we come to the time Neptune was discovered, and we obviously, we can't say it's Jupiter, so we have to say again it's like we're crossing Saturn then. So we don't say it's Saturn, we say, oh, that's Neptune. And then we go another 84 years and we come to the next big crossing, and that's, of course, Pluto. But back in the day, that would have been the original first dwarf planet discovered. which was Omicron Ceti or Mirror. And this was 1596. Remember, 1588 was when the Great Storm had wiped out the Spanish Armada. So they've been pushed into massive great aggression again. And, you know, and excuse me, keep exploring all this data, but, you know, this obviously is like I say, the time Carlos Ferrada predicted the planet X would cross. And we start realizing this is the dwarf system. Because as it comes in, Jupiter came in, or as our Earth came in, indeed, and Jupiter came in. As our Earth came in here, it would have come in very fast, cutting in much faster. But as it came out, it would have been span out much more. And so as it span out much more, which isn't the actual orbital mechanics aren't in this single diagram, aren't expressed exactly as they really are. It's put in a very simple expression just to try and capture the overall kind of the overall pattern there. But you can imagine as this really comes in, because both these are spiraling, the Sun and Planet X are spiraling around together. They've both got the same angle of intention. They're both going forward, but they're in this relationship like that, going forward. They're not going round like that. And so it's very different to, say, the Sun moving around, the Earth moving around the Sun. It's a different type of orbital mechanics. And so we start seeing a different relationship with orbital mechanics that Kepler didn't fully express in his three laws of orbital mechanics. And of course, Isaac Newton, because of his observations of Halley's Comet, upgraded Kepler's third law. What we're simply doing now is upgrading that relationship. Picture our Sun going round, or our Sun and Planet X both orbiting the center, both orbiting the Milky Way. And they're stuck in this relationship as they go round. They can't escape each other's gravity, but they're both still charging forward in the same direction going round, but they're locked into this relationship. Now, when one is totally locked into the orbit and it closes down, I can imagine it begins an orbit like Earth round the Sun. But in this relationship, they're both independently going round Planet X, which means our Sun is still very much orbiting the Milky Way, but its relationship is not the same as the relationship, say, of our Earth orbiting our Sun. And I'm imagining that this is because there's a ratio. Imagine that, you've been brought up with the notion of this 3,600 year orbit, and it's a total bullshit relationship. This relationship that I offer you here, the 336 year orbit, gives you the orbital mechanics of the Valentina Zarkova kind of Sun dynamo cycle, the grand solar minimum cycle that all came about in 2012 when we started to understand what the Mayans were talking about with their sunspots and everything else like this big cycle that no doubt is what Stonehenge is all about, predicting this bigger cycle. And you can see why Stonehenge would be closed for the solstice, to stop us connecting with our galactic center, because these orbital mechanics help you connect to your galactic center. That's what I'm offering you here with these orbital mechanics. That's all. I'm just offering you an opportunity of ways to navigate to your galactic center and harmonize with your highest aspiration. That's all this is. And this big unfolding, this big revealing is just an opportunity for you to navigate better. And so picture fundamental orbital mechanics in the simplest fashion. And it was Dr. Claudia Orbis that broke this down for me and helped me understand this really kind of basic equation. And I love her research. I'm obviously not down with the kind of like the stellar cores and all that sort of stuff, because I don't need to be down for that, because I can see what these objects are. I don't need to invent that. But then if you can't get past the Copernicus system and the standard model, which I've had to get past, which that Alex Lujan shot, that Mexico, the webcams de Mexico shot on the 1st of September that I just showed you earlier, if that is not absolute pinpoint evidence, I could say it will be exactly there, and I'm suggesting it goes that way, and suddenly you can see it's going that way, and it just fits in with this whole thing. We've been struggling trying to get dwarf planets like Jupiter and Saturn to come past, and bigger. Suppose you're a dwarf planet 4 times bigger than Jupiter to somehow swing past our Earth and not suck it up. It's just like, stories are ridiculous. They're utterly ridiculous. And so didn't need to come up with stellar cores, and yet her research is a very revealing research, because she's trying to work with all these different bodies as well. You know, a lot of us are trying to link up with grand solar minimum, because that's where it's going. That's the natural evolution of our understanding. You know, we start with global cooling, and then we go into global warming, and then the sides don't meet, so we go into climate change. But it's all to push carbon dioxide, and the whole carbon dioxide is a total myth. There's 0.04% carbon dioxide present at the moment. You just can't get it high, even with all these volcanoes all around the earth spewing. We cannot get it higher than that, even though we've seen records of it being far higher. So there must have been really, really super volcanic periods on this earth, and we know there were. And when we kind of see this evolvement of our story, that now we're morphing back into the grand solar minimum story. We're coming out of the carbon dioxide story that says that we've got to build nuclear power stations on fault lines and tsunami hotspots to stop the carbon dioxide spewing out of the massive increase in volcanoes that are occurring at the moment. And so when we piece all this together and we start realizing that we're starting to understand this 340, 350 year cycle, that the grand solar minimum, kind of like the involvement into this grand solar minimum kind of theory that's emerging now. And I don't want to tread too much on the toes of that, because I realize that this model I offer you is massively complex, and it hits on all the beliefs that you have at the moment. And but that is the cycle, and you know, it is what it is. Anyway, when we take these orbital mechanics and we divide them into these 2 simple camps, that is effectively open and closed orbits. Keep it down to that. It's almost like a binary understanding of a kind of a binary, you know, computer binary code. This orbital mechanics is fitting into the same type of things. It's open orbits and closed orbits. And when an orbit's like that, if an orbit's way open, it means that something's going to come in and it's going to go off, and it's not going to come back. But if once something comes in and it goes off at a lesser angle, it gets to a point when that angle closes down, when whatever it is that's coming in and going off, once that angle drops down and it's pulled back in a kind of slingshot back round, once that angle closes down, it's going to come back, it's going to return. Now you can understand that a 3,600 year orbit is not, there's no such thing. You can't have that. It can't be that big. It's just going to come in, it's going to go out, and it's gone. It's not coming back. You can't have this 3,600 year orbit. You know, you're supposed to be 4 times bigger than Jupiter. This thing, they say it's 4 times bigger than Jupiter. Think, well, Jupiter's got a 12-year orbit, and you're going 4 times bigger than Jupiter. How much bigger? Let's go 4 times 20, 4 12s, 1 12, 2 12, 24, 3 12, 36, 3,600. You know, we're kind of 360, which is, you know, we're getting an idea of how big our sun really is in comparison to Jupiter in terms of mass. Remember that our sun is hydrogen going into helium. It's the very beginning of the periodic table. It's atoms that are starting on the periodic table. They're going to get fused into helium, and they're going to, as they get compressed, they're going to release that energy that we call blazing sunlight, and it's going to get fused down into helium. Well, Saturn and Jupiter, they've gone way past this kind of like this hydrogen going into helium, moving up the periodic table into our dwarf planet. It's gone into iron, it's spewing out iron. And so it's much denser, it's much heavier, but it doesn't produce the same type of light in its beginning early sun stage. So we can see how matter is formed in this process of what we're seeing in our little microcosm of our binary system that we live in. And we can see how matter has been produced in our solar in our galaxy and in our solar system at large. We can see the formation, and how we could ever expect that Jupiter and Saturn, that are in much later stages in their fusion processes, could be heavier, or not to say they couldn't be heavier, but that they would orbit our sun is they're ridiculous notions. They're just ridiculous notions. And now we're just seeing the great revealing of that. We're just seeing the great process of starting to come out of this. It's a slave class story. That's what the Christian kind of story is. It's a story that tends to turn us into a bit of a sheeple that just follow in belief. We can't put these orbital mechanics together because we can't get past our beliefs, the structure of it. Because when we create these beliefs and we get too close to them, it's like we become a closed orbit around them, and we get stuck and we can't escape them, and we're locked into belief. We need to see the bigger picture and come away from these stories that tie us too tightly into stories of belief, as we can't escape their gravity. And these stories, many of these stories, are set by agendas which are literally trying to hack into us and take us over and take possession of us. And such is the nature of the time that we live in. We're being pulled into stories of belief in various different fashions. And you could be in the Copernicus story, which is a Christian story, effectively. And we keep blowing it out by the sightings, but we can't escape to it because we don't realize it's a religious story. And the background of the psychic connections that we hook up to, that get a grip and get a hold of us by when we enter into those stories, and we become fanatical with those stories. And we don't even realize that we're bound by them. We don't even realize that they have this massive hold on us in the same way. Look at carbon dioxide. We take Jesus off the cross and we put the earth on the cross. The earth is dying for your sins. You have to build nuclear power stations on these fault lines. You have to agree to have this vaccine agenda by Bill Gates, which is going to bring us down to carbon zero, to save the earth from being crucified because of your sins against it. Or you've got to go and buy a new car that costs that will consume 100 times more fuel in its manufacture than the car it replaces will ever use in its lifetime. And very often these cars are electric. They're going to be completely dependent on nuclear again, or coal, if there's not sustainable energy. And let's face it, we're just not investing in that. We're investing in nuclear. We're investing in terrible energies, terrible toxic energies, and it's all just greenwashing, endless amounts of greenwashing to keep us away from what we're really going into, and that is the age of fusion. And that's what we're coming into now. We're coming into the plasma age, the next stage of matter. That's the stage we're coming into now. But that's going to be the new energy source that we're going to come into now. And one person I really want to do an interview with is, like I say, is the guy who edited Laughing Gas, and he knows so much about fusion. So I'm trying to encourage him to to not only set up his own channel, Peter Moore, I'm trying to, because he's an amazing poet, he does this most amazing work, but he's so researched into fusion technology that I really want to get him to inspire some of my subscribers. So putting that out to Pete Moore, that I'm going to be hitting on you to come and do an interview with me. And he's got a poem that's just gone up on the internet that I will put in this link. I'll put in the link. You gotta check it out. It's the most incredible. If you watch it, get in contact with him and say, listen, do it. Get in contact. Watch his poem and get in contact with him and say, Pete, you've got to do a talk on plasma with Dave Dobbs. Just make those comments on the on the video when I put the link in. The link might not arrive straight away. The video will probably go up, and it might take a couple of days for the link to turn up, but it will turn up. I'll do my best to put it. He's done it with Estas. I don't know if you know the Russian guitarist, the most incredible guitarist you'd ever see. You watch YouTube videos, put Estas. I can't remember his surname, but you just put Estas on, it just comes up on the search engine straight away. Just his him playing. You'll see he'll start playing to a group of people in the middle of nowhere, and just suddenly he'll have like thousands of people gathered around him. Anyway, he's playing to one of Pete's poems, so I'll put the link in of one of Pete's poems, just to give you an idea and encourage Pete to come and give us all a talk on plasma and where we're going. This is where we're really going. They're going to try, all the powers that be are going to try and stop us going there, and we've got to really encourage people to speak their truths. You know, there's a lot in my community here. We've just had someone who's really massive with the whole QAnon thing, and she's getting a lot of funding because of putting her message out. She really believes that Trump is here to clean out the swamp. And a friend kind of a mutual friend put up a comment and saying, you know, just not really kind of believing the whole story, especially the whole King John story, where it's all going at the moment. King John is coming in to liberate us all, and he's basically effectively the new Messiah, along with Trump and I don't know what else, but they really believe this. And again, it's another story of belief, and maybe they're right or wrong, I don't know, but he had a pop at it, and then they just massively attacked, and suddenly I'm accusing him of the very thing that they're saying, you know, that Trump's going to clean out the swamp of all these, you know what, and start saying that if he's having a pop at her, he must be part of that agenda, and so he's this and he's that, and there was all these horrible accusations, and it all just suddenly turned into like exactly what they want: divide and conquer, and suddenly the person who'd just been accused suddenly saw what's happening, works with people anyway, and just realized that this person was in a deep state of belief, like a born-again Christian, locked into it, just couldn't see it. Absolutely, they're just being played by this story. Or it really is true. Or it really is true that QAnon's correct, and that King John III has come forward and is the new king, and he's been crowned in, and the Queen's been executed, and the swamp's been cleaned out, and they're getting rid of all these you-know-whats, and da-da-da-da-da, and this is the story that's unfolding. Maybe this is the truth. They really, really believe it. This is what's behind Trump keep getting in. This is the massive, massive, big conspiracy tale that's all behind, that's all started with, you know, who was the InfoWars guy, Alex Jones, you know, who just completely and utterly made Trump the second coming, didn't he? He's going to do this. Trump's going to tear apart NATO. Of course, is Trump going to tear apart NATO? All the things he said, of course, none of that's happening. Trump's doing everything opposite to what he said. The economy's never been, it's in the worst state possible. Trump is just absolutely openly pushing that Europe enters this free trade deal that all the Brexiteers said it was Europe that was trying to get us into, and yet Trump is at the head of that. Ironically, on the shield of King John III, ironically, there's a ship with number 77 and two masts, or two sails, like 77 on his coat of arms. And of course, this is a maritime rule again. So we know this is maritime law. Whatever King John III is, he's maritime law. Same as NATO, same as TTIP, same as TTIP. It's all this oceanic rule trying to take us over and trying to be our gods again. And we can rise above and not be enslaved by this belief system anymore. We can go above that. We can take this to the next level now. We have that. We have all that we need to do that now. We're ready for a big quantum jump in consciousness now. And of course, what happened was this community recognized what was happening, and they just realized that we were being divided by a story of belief, Christian belief, unfortunately, that was coming in. It's all just Christian belief so often, isn't it? Much as I break my heart to say it, because I know that so many of the Christians that are involved in the Planet X thing, they're so on the right side and they so want to save this earth and that sort of stuff. But the religious belief that holds us from seeing what's going on is just but this is all about intention. Ultimately, it's all about intention, and we've got to start seeing through beliefs, and we've got to start allowing people to be who they are, believe what they want, not get angry with them, and try and let everyone have their opinions. And so we're not becoming fundamental against them in any way. So we're not attacking and creating this friction, creating this, you're not, the carbon dioxide are absolutely religiously believe you have to build nuclear power stations on fault lines. They're the kind of like the Christian groups that absolutely believe that you kind of like, that Jesus is coming, and this is all Jesus, and this isn't anything to Jupiter. This is just Jesus is coming, and this whole thing, and those who are in the standard model that absolutely will not let anyone see an astronomical model above the control of Catholic domination. We're all in various parts of this religious story that's holding us from seeing what's really happening. And no matter what camp we're in, we're all there going, you idiot, you total idiot, you're all idiots. From this kind of perspective of belief, we're all in different. It's taken me so long to break out of the Copernicus model to present this system to you so you can see this and start connecting to your galactic center. And how many of you will turn around and say, you're in the same belief system we're in? Maybe I am, but I tell you what, I've given you one hell of a lot of flybys. I've predicted in advance to show you this system. This isn't just one. This is going round and around and around and around, and we've managed to slowly piece this together over quite a lot of years. And I've offered you the orbital mechanics in advance of what you're going to see to show you how this system works over and over again, and when you're going to get the big earthquakes. We knew we were going to get an earthquake on the 23rd of June. We all knew it. We've been watching it too long. We know now that next time it's not going to be till next flyby is not going to be, like I said, we could have a bit of debris coming through, asteroids and that sort of stuff because we're close to the tail. But the next big sighting, not that big, I don't think, because we're not at the same. These aren't, it's like an ecliptic plane like that. There's one plane and there's another ecliptic plane and they're going through, and that's the crossing point. So anything up here is not going to be so close to the crossing point. Not until we get back round to December, January, we're going to get in close to the crossing points. But that doesn't mean we're not going to see big flybys and experience a bit of kind of like a few earthquakes and a bit of seismology with that. We saw in July, we saw earthquakes on July the 3rd when we had the big flyby, when Alex Lewin caught the flyby on July the 3rd, 2019, last year. We had earthquakes in California. So to say that we're not going to get earthquakes at the beginning of August would be, we just watch it for too long. We've been doing this for too long, guys. It's just every aspect of this we've got lit. We've got absolutely licked. We've seen that point in the flyby, coming in, going out. Do you remember the incredible shot that Matt Rogers, that put Matt Rogers as far as I can see, as the second big Planet X video maker in the UK. Well, actually, Neil Martin was from the UK. He was massive. He was a massive channel. So he wasn't he wasn't the second. Neil Martin had a massive channel, massive following. His sightings were just extraordinary, wasn't it? But Matt Rogers came on the map with his sighting on the 15th of August 2016, which I brought into my last video, didn't I? And am I on that point there? Well, actually, it's right there, I suppose, if I just bring that down. When was it? It was there, wasn't it? Briefly, but maybe it's not. Maybe it wasn't on that shot there. I was hoping I was going to see it there, but no, I'm sorry about that. But that was the, that was, when was that? That was, there were some of the shots of Jupiter, some of the shots that were getting incredible shots of Jupiter, and then the shot on the, that wasn't the shot I was referring to, actually. That wasn't Matt Rogers' shot. I couldn't find that shot, but that was the epic shot, that the one I always saw, the Wall Thornhill. Another one pushing just a religious belief, just to hide that very thick of Jupiter doing a massive thunderbolt literally into Mars, the 14th of October. Not the shot I was trying to show you, Matt Rogers' famous shot where you just saw it going off into the night sky, or sorry, coming in from the night sky. I believe it could have been going out. But anyway, you got it on the 15th, didn't you? And you could see all the debris in its tail. That was on the 14th of October 2016, just going past that Matt Rogers point where we saw literally Jupiter plasma charging into Mars, because Mars was right next to where Jupiter was at that point. And you saw the massive charge that Wall Thornhill tells you that caused Valles Marianis, the massive 4,000 kilometer long fault line, perfectly straight fault line. It's like, I don't know how many kilometers deep it is. It's like 200 kilometers wide, but I don't know, it's about 10 kilometers deep, 7 kilometers deep, something like that, 7 miles deep. It's really deep. It's just kind of like deep as our mountains are high. It's perfectly straight. It's got a massive detonations hole in the center. It's clearly the point, the cataclysm that terminated Mars. And we're trying to turn it into a story to hide what really happened. He is literally trying to conceal what happened and say that that is what happened. But of course, when that happened on the 14th of October 2016, there was no such scar on Mars to indicate that that's what happens when that occurs. So that's why he'll never talk about that shot, because it interferes. It interferes with his theory, his bullshit theory. Sorry, Wall. I'm not trying to give you a hard time, but I do see you giving a hard time to a lot of other people that you show, and their faces to discredit their name. And it's so blatant. It's caught on a webcam. Loads of people downloaded it, and of course, you would never talk about it, because we know what that scar is on Mars, and we know what really happened, and we know where the Martians went, the reptile agenda that lived on Mars. We know where they went. We know what dominates this Earth. We know what caused the Great Flood. And it's a story that stares us in the face. Anyway, sorry, Matt, I was about to show that image of yours, but I know that so many of you seen it, and you can find it on so many of my shots over and over again. I bring up so much of this data over and over again, don't I, to kind of like try and show you the big story that we're in. Anyway, it looks like pretty much we're past this aspect of the flyby, of this part of the flyby. We've got one more month until they're going to force this Europe deal. And remember, this is what this is all about. If we remember the original thing, when I wrote Laughing Gas, the whole thing, that 2011, 2012, when I published the book saying, don't leave Europe, they're going to try and get you out of Europe, they're going to try and blame Europe, all the horrible things that Britain and America have done, they're going to try and lump it all on Europe. They're going to try and make it as if Europe wants to take you into the evil TTIP, Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, that's going to link up with TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but actually it's all the agenda that's running this. And of course, all those that were locked in, they were locked into a belief. That was what was speaking through their mouths. They thought it was them that was speaking, but it was the belief, that which runs the belief channel with it. They were literally channeling. That's why when they hear Boris Johnson shouting out that we're now going into this we're now going to link up with whatever free trade agreements we can strike up with Europe and America. We're going to link up with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, everything Brexiteers, and yet belief is not channeling through them on that, because the belief agenda has got what they wanted here. And so nothing needs to be said. So nothing, even though they hear him saying it, belief doesn't speak through them, because belief has got them right where it wants them. And this is what duality is: your heart and your head. And this is what's narrowing down, and this is what this whole system brings about. It brings about singularity. That's all that's happening. And that's why Denny's passing is so significant now, because her passing now is going to help so many come together and realize what this has done, because she died alone in hospital without all the friends and community that she had part of her. She died alone in hospital. And all those friends have been denied that, to be able to mourn with her and be with her at that process, are hurt by that. They're heartbroken by that. And they're going to come together because of that and celebrate her life. And she's going to be there to help with that unity, that bringing together with this. As my mum is doing the same thing right now in her transition. She's helping us come together. And that's what we've got to do. Come together. Allow everyone to have their opinions. It's all right. It's all right if I believe that you shouldn't build nuclear power stations on fault lines, isn't it? If I don't back your carbon agenda. Is that all right? Am I allowed to do that? Am I such a demonic, horrible human being? Am I really a demonic human being if I don't believe that Trump's the second coming? Am I really a demonic human being if I don't believe the standard model, the 500-year-old model? Finally, I just want to talk about the last aspect I want to talk about is King John III. And I just want to look at that history of King John I to King John II. And because I find it so interesting, because obviously King John, as in King John I, King John was the one who signed the Magna Carta in 1215, wasn't it? He signed it in 1215 because he'd been part of the Crusades, and then he'd really failed in his mission in France. He'd lost loads of land in France. It'd been a bit of a catastrophic run for him. And so he lost. He lost in France, basically. And so he'd come back with his tail between his legs, and the barons had taken back much more power, which was the forcing of the Magna Carta. They wanted much more power to recoup much of their own wealth and have much more rights. And that was the signing of the Magna Carta and empowering the barons to take much more power back from the king, who'd lost so much of their wealth in his own kind of defeat, if you like, in France just before the signing of the Magna Carta. So he'd signed the Magna Carta, and then his son was Henry III. So Henry III then tries to reverse the power that his father had given away with the Magna Carta. And so we're told that he'd gone up against Simon de Montfort and the Londoners in 1264, which was the Battle of Lewes. But in reality, in that battle, what had really happened was that Simon de Montfort came down with the Londoners and didn't just come up against Henry III. He came up against Henry III, Henry III's son, Longshanks, who would become Edward I. He came up against King of Scotland, what would become King of Scotland, Robert the Bruce. He came up against King of Germany, which was Henry III's brother, the richest man in all of Europe, the biggest army in all of Europe. Basically Germany, the German army, all there, fortified in the first Norman army, which was Lewes Castle, which had all these kind of like ditchling beacon, all these kind of beacons all around, which made it, you could see any big armies coming from a distance. That if you thought you couldn't handle it, you could just go straight down to Newhaven, right on the coast, jump on a ferry and just and get away, go to France. So they were in the most defensive, powerful point. There was no way they could lose. They had all their armies, and you were told that just Simon de Montfort comes down and defeats all of these people, all of these kings, with a bunch of Londoners. It's a fairy tale, stupid Superman story. You can clearly see that there was a massive revolution. It was an English civil war that unfolded just like in the times that's like in the 1600s, and the same as what we are told is the first civil war between Cromwell and the Cavaliers and the Roundhead, Cromwell and Charles I. So we see this first English civil war really, and then so that's Henry III and his son Edward I become Edward I. Now we know that Henry III lost. This is the tale where Edward Henry III's brother Richard, King Richard, not Richard the Lionheart, but Richard King of Germany. He went and hid in the windmill and pretended to be the baker, pretend to be whatever you call it, the baker. I don't know what you call it, but the windmill man, the baker, I guess, and that's that tale. And then I guess we come to Richard II, or is it Richard III? It's Richard, isn't it? It's the next Richard in the line, because it's the Richard who's 10 years old in 1381, at the time of the peasants' revolt. And we're just coming up to John here, John II. So we get to John via Richard, but it starts with the peasants' revolt, where the peasants turn up. So basically, Edward had died. Edward I had died. And who took over? Edward, his son, Richard II, should have taken over, but he's a 10-year-old boy. So the Mayor of London has got all the power, and because he's got all the power, he's transferring all the power back to the barons, because he's not the king. He's trying to keep it all in the barons' hands. So he's trying to do the same process as Cromwell was trying to do, the same process as Simon de Montfort, in a sense, was trying to do. He's trying to take the power back from the monarchy and putting it back into the into the barons' hands. So he's setting up the whole city of London. He's like the whole free trade deal of what Trump represents now, in a sense. He's bringing about this kind of signing up this free trade deal. It's all going to be this kind of business, and by this big business centre, and that's how it's all going to run. And so he enacts the poll tax. The Mayor of London enacts the poll tax through Richard II, who's just a 10-year-old boy, doesn't really have any understanding of what's really unfolding. And of course, it all backfires, and then we get the second real civil war, because they go up, they try and take the poll tax from Wat Tyler. And while they're in there, just think, we want to win it, we might as well rape his daughters. So they rape his daughters, take all his money, and try and do what they're trying to do with the free trade deal. Total rape of everything you are. You lose everything under this rule. It's a total. Look at Canada, the most sued nation on the planet, as a result of signing the free trade deal. They can't stop any type of corporate legislation ripping every part of their infrastructure apart. They can't stand in the way. Every court case costs billions and billions and billions. Can't stop it. So it's that kind of same relationship that Wat Tyler was up against in the Peasants' Revolt. 1381. Then that fails. There's a massive uprising, and what happens then? The king says yes to what Tyler's. He says, we want all the rights. We want it like it just so easy to be. Blah blah blah. We want fair rights. We want, we want all this sort of stuff. That we want fairness, tolerance. We want decency. We want sovereignty. We want sovereign rights. So the king says yes. And of course, Mayor of London's just a bit like, hang on, mate, this isn't quite going. And so he walks up, he's on his horse, and he goes up to Wat Tyler, who's also on his horse, and he goes, well done, young man. He goes to pat him on his shoulder, but he has the famous London dagger in his hand, which as he goes to pat him on his shoulder, he runs the blade across Wat Tyler's neck and cuts his throat. That's the dagger that's held above as you enter the city of London now. That's the famous dagger that represents that entry into the city of London. And of course, that stopped all that flow. All the people went out, and I can't remember which common it was, but it's the famous common where, you know, during the time of the big protests in London, like all the anti-capitalist demos, they go and gather on that same common where everyone went thinking they were victorious because the king had said yes, even though Wat Tyler's throat had been cut, the king had said yes. And of course, all the king's men, under instruction of the mayor of London, went and they took them all prisoner. They killed many, and they tortured the rest to get all the names and those names, and they went spread up right through the country, and they went and found all of those names that had been any part of the revolution, tortured them for more names, and on it went. This torturing bloodbath of hell moved up through the country and just took out anyone that had revolution, or more specifically evolution in their genealogy. They did kind of what the virus is doing now, but just taking out a large percentage of the population. And then what happened was Richard II then became a man, and he went, and there was a plague that ripped through France when he was king, and it wiped out half the population. And this is so interesting because he took advantage of that plague and went in, and whilst they were weak with famine, he invaded France, and he took John II prisoner, and he ransomed him for most of his fortune, enormous great deal of wealth, and took back everything. Ironically, King John I, I guess, John who signed the Magna Carta, had kind of given away in his first signing. He took it all back in this mad little cycle. I just thought, you know, we see this kind of, you can see what the real power about kings and queens is. It's not really their law. Law is the system they force upon us to rule over us. But the kind of rule of thumb that they use to take power is war, military, brutal force. That's why I'm a little bit challenged with the whole kind of like King John III story, to believe that by law he's the king, so he can just push the existing monarchy aside and take control, and they can just go in and execute Queen Elizabeth II, and it's all just being, and clear out all the, you know, just like the Queen is probably the most defended person I can imagine in the world. Could King John just take that over just by royal assent? Possibly. I'm not saying I don't believe it. I don't disbelieve it. I hear it, and I'm just looking at the kind of the orbital mechanics of that story. And everything that Trump's doing that is complete contrary to every contradiction to everything that we were told he was going to do. That they were going to stop TTIP, that he was going to stop Israel, he was going to stop all this war. And he's just done everything opposite. He's going to break NATO up, and yet here he is making sure that all the NATO countries pay way more for NATO membership. He's doing completely opposite of everything that we're being told, and yet we have this belief story, just like the Brexiteers with their belief. Yeah, I've done it. Belief's a funny thing when you let it get in you. And they're locked onto this QAnon story in the same kind of way that Christian is locked onto the Jesus story. And I tell you what, not many of these flybys look like Jesus to me. And you know, the Romans are all about Jupiter being their main god. And then they create Christianity, which is built around this zodiac that we can clearly see on the 50p coin is the exact zodiac I show. I only discovered it when I'd finally pieced it out together. Then I could recognize it on the 50p coin. I was so shocked when I saw it. And to see Jupiter right there over and over and over and over again. And all the sightings of everything coming in and going out of Jupiter and that whole pattern that we see. And every aspect of it just making sense over and over and over again. You know, it's funny, even we go back to the time of 1588, when Galileo was seeing Jupiter massive and the entire Spanish Armada is destroyed with this storm. And the Catholics are waiting for the new king to be born, this new king that's going to be sworn in, is going to be more powerful, and it's going to give the Catholics full sovereign power, because the whole country was divided between the Protestants and the Catholics. And the Protestants still had way more power, even though Mary I was kind of had a claim. Bloody Mary was the Queen of England, because her father had died, and she was effectively made queen under the Catholics' rules. But the thing is that Henry had divorced her, so really she'd lost that line. So the Catholics were claiming it was their line, but the Protestants had massive power. And don't forget, this is all about who sits in the House of Lords, because the clergy have votes in the House of Lords. So they had massive power, because the Protestants, Henry VIII had put so many Protestants in power. So Bloody Mary was enacting the kind of like the Spanish Inquisition in Britain again. She was killing all of these Protestants. Queen Elizabeth was in the Tower of London waiting for a mandate to have her executed, and all they needed was Mary to give birth to this son. They were waiting again for this king to be born. They would deliver. And then suddenly everything just changes, and it turns out there's not really a king. There's no king. There's no king. The king was just a cancer in Mary's womb, growing just like a baby, growing just like an idea, a belief in our heads. It's funny how this story repeats itself over and over. And then when the guards came to get Elizabeth from the tower, they were getting her to walk her to the throne. But what would she have been believing when they were coming up those stairs to get her, and she heard the guards coming up, knowing that Mary was about to give birth, and the screaming pains, oh my God, there's an heir, here they come, they're going to walk me straight down to the guillotine and chop my head off. What would she have been doing as those guards came up the stairs? And that's what we've all got to be going back to, is that divine connection. You know, we are not judged in our slave stories. We are all, from a higher perspective, we are all slaves trying to escape from the prison of belief. We are all slaves trying to escape. And the higher spaces, that the higher gods that are working over this, know that we are all in this slave belief system. And they judge us by our intentions, not by our beliefs. Who you are by your intentions, by your deeds of goodness and your efforts. You know, I see this in my own individual way because of my understanding of the orbital mechanics. You see this in your way. But let's allow, Glastonbury is a wonderful town for allowing people to exist with wonderful, wonderful, far out ideas that exist beyond religious belief systems, which has bound us for so long. So let's allow everyone to have their different ideas and not make these little negative comments about them when we speak about them, just to load the scales with our disbelief. So any person who thinks about that person, we've already guaranteed that they have to think negatively of them, because we've sneered about them and we've made our little negative comments to all their friends. We've tried to make all their closest allies move away from them because of their belief systems. We've attacked their character. We've cursed their names. Let's try to stop the cursing of their good names. Let's try to allow everyone to be who they are. Let's try to come back to unity and togetherness and allowance and tolerance. Let's try and break this division that they're trying to start. Thank you for all your time. I can hear that there's noise in the kitchen, so the nurses are here, so I can see the next phase is going to start. So I'm going to love you and leave you there, but all the love in the world. This is all about coming together. They're going to try and divide us at every juncture, and we're going to try and come together at every juncture and come into unity. That's what this is all about. All the love in the world. Take care. Bye-bye.